I've tried to stay pretty quiet on this for a while now, but as the Commanders' search for their new defensive coordinator continues to progress and nothing materializes, I have to say it. I am officially worried. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Full Command Show. My name is Grant Mitchell, back with you all on this Saturday morning, here to discuss the Commanders' never-ending, seemingly, search for their next defensive coordinator. In this video, I don't have any new updates. I'm, for the first time in a while, just going to give an unfiltered opinion on what is going on, what this process has been like, and why I'm losing confidence that the proper decision will be made. So, guys, make sure that you do have the like and the hype buttons pressed if you are enjoying the content here on the channel. Subscribe if you're new around here. And as we go through this, again, this is an opinionated video. A lot of the times my videos are not reporting, but going over the news, analyzing different things. This is opinionated, so I expect there to be agreeing and dissenting opinions. So whatever you got, make sure you throw it down in the comment section below. I'll be reading and responding to as many as I possibly can. So the Commanders are now several weeks into their search for their new defensive coordinator. And before I say anything else here, I also just want to make this part very clear. They have known they were going to be in the market for a defensive coordinator since November, when Joe Witt Jr. was demoted to whatever he was. I don't think he was ever given a title. I still don't really know if there's been any clarity on that. Just a defensive assistant. It was obvious they were going to hire a new defensive coordinator once the season ended. DQ just didn't want to fire his guy and make an embarrassment out of him in the middle of the season, which I can respect, honestly. As man to man, I can respect that. But DQ, Adam Peters, everyone in the building knew a new defensive coordinator was needed. So, again, we are now several weeks into the Commanders' search for their new DC. By my count, they have interviewed 8 people. And that's not including Jeff Ulbrich, who they really wanted to interview, but were kind of waiting and hoping he wouldn't be retained in Atlanta. Lo and behold, he was. That is not including Raheem Morris, who kind of just been this ever-present threat to be the guy at the top of the list. If Raheem Morris doesn't get a head coaching job, then everybody else who's interviewing step aside because we're going to give him the job. So it's as many as a minimum of 10, because there could be other people they tried to speak to, that they have spoken to, that there just haven't been reports of. So there could be more. But the 8 people that the Commanders have interviewed for that defensive coordinator spot: Dennard Wilson, Karl Scott, Al Harris, Jonathan Gannon, Brian Flores, Joe Cullen, Patrick Graham, and then yesterday, I guess you could say this is the news part of the video, yesterday we heard that they attempted to schedule, or they did complete an interview with Teryl Austin, who is the Steelers defensive coordinator since 2022. Of these names, I'm not going to disrespect these men. I'm not going to say that they aren't intelligent men. Nothing like that. I think there are some good options. Obviously, Brian Flores may be the best defensive mind in the NFL, although he agreed to go back to the Vikings unless he gets a head coaching job elsewhere. I'm pretty high on Karl Scott, and granted, that's just me. He's never been a defensive coordinator. I've never spoken to him. I could be completely wrong. But just from what I know, having listened to him speak at master classes and looking at his resume and seeing the coaches that he's been around, I think Karl Scott's a very good candidate. I would be happy with Karl Scott. But the longer this goes on, the longer that there's more inaction, and the more names that just underwhelming. And again, out of respect for these men, I won't say which ones are underwhelming. I will just highlight the ones that are whelming. Karl Scott, again, Brian Flores, Jonathan Gannon, those guys kind of stand out. This team has known for 2 full months that they needed to replace their defensive coordinator. So the way that I look at this is, considering they're on 8 interviews, they would have liked it to have been 10. They would have liked to have interviewed Raheem Morris and Jeff Ulbrich, right? This raises an uncomfortable question, which is one that I've seen floated around out there for about a week now. And then I was having a conversation about it in the comment section yesterday, and I promised that this would be the topic of an upcoming video. And it's time to finally address it. So I don't believe, or most of the time I try not to judge people before they're given an opportunity to perform, right? I'll reference the David Blau hire. I said that I wasn't calling it a great hire, and I won't. I will never call it a great hire until I see the team on the field. I also haven't called it a bad hire, and I never will call it a bad hire until I see the team on the field. All I have said is I'm nervously anxious and excited to see David Blau, because I'm not going to judge the man before he has been given an opportunity to acquit himself. So the conversation that defensive coordinators would be afraid / reluctant / unwilling to accept this job because Dan Quinn might be on the hot seat next season. I didn't want to have that conversation because I wanted to see how things played out. Well, now that we are weeks into this process, the Commanders have, again, 10 targets. They've interviewed 8 people. This is just too many. There is a difference between doing your due diligence and encountering some issues. So, to their credit, that could be a variety of issues. It could be they spoke to all these people. They realized they didn't really like what they heard. So they didn't want to settle for making the wrong hire. Okay, put that in one bucket. But of course, the counter to that is, how have you had 2 full months now, 8 interviews, and none of those 8 went well enough for you to offer them the job? That speaks to poor evaluation from the outside. How do you not have a better list of candidates assembled? Okay, well, what if that's not the issue? What if they like these people? Well, why hasn't one been hired? I mean, sometimes people drag their feet a little bit, right? I mean, Mike McDaniel, he signed to be the Chargers head coach, but then we found out he was still taking head coaching interviews, and he just canceled on the Bills. So, okay, some people drag their feet. Mike McDaniel's dragging his feet, and he has every right to, because Mike McDaniel's probably the best coach on the market in this entire cycle, at least in my opinion. So a guy like that has the right to. But what about some of these other interviewees? And again, no disrespect to these people, but with names like Joe Cullen and Patrick Graham and Dennard Wilson and Teryl Austin, when you look around the NFL landscape, those names are not the people who are the most in demand. Robert Saleh was in demand. That's why the Titans hired him. Brian Flores was in demand. That's why he was getting multiple head coaching interviews and why the Vikings were working so hard to retain him. If the Commanders had found their guy and they said, yep, that's absolutely the one, I feel like the news would have been announced by now. Keep in mind, when this whole process started, the reports were the Commanders wanted to have the hires done within the first week. We heard offensive coordinator was going to come before defensive coordinator, but they wanted that DC job done. And then they wanted it done by the weekend. And then they wanted it done by the middle of next week. And then the end of next week. And here we are a week after that. And we're still waiting. So to get back to the main question here, are coaches afraid, unwilling, reluctant, skeptical, whatever terminology you want to use, are they that when it comes to working on under Dan Quinn's staff, knowing that Dan Quinn might be on the hot seat next year? If Dan Quinn is fired at the end of this year, why would the DC be retained? Unless they're doing an outstanding job. When a new head coach comes in, they normally like to bring their guys, right? Again, there are exceptions to this. In Cleveland, if Jim Schwartz doesn't get the job, he'll probably stay there. Jeff Ulbrich stayed there with Stefanski in Cleveland, but it doesn't usually work like that. You see it with GMs who want to bring their own coaches. Coaches want to have their own assistants. GMs want to have their own quarterbacks, things like that. So we are now far enough in the process that I can say we have reached that point where one of many potential possibilities is the reason for where we're at, but it is one of those. This isn't just going on for no reason. They're not just taking their time. Either they are offering these jobs to people and they are not being accepted, they didn't have a great list of candidates at the beginning, or they have gone through these candidates and they realize that they didn't really like any of them. So the way that it's going right now, I will say this again, of everybody who's on the board, my top 3 picks were Brian Flores, Karl Scott, and Jonathan Gannon. I'm just little old me. Brian Flores is staying in Minnesota unless he gets a head coaching job, and I don't think he's going to. Karl Scott is number 2 for me, so I would be happy if they hired him. But I ultimately think it's going to be Graham, Scott, or Raheem Morris. Raheem Morris is basically out of every head coaching job aside from Arizona, but apparently there's actually a chance he might get that Arizona job. Raheem Morris has said he would go to television, or he could go to television if he didn't get a head coaching job. So I really hope that the team is not just sitting around waiting for the Raheem Morris solution, because even if Raheem Morris is available, I think there are better options than him. I just do. But we're far along now in the process again where I have to say that I am concerned. There's some level of concern just to be had, again, with whether it was poor evaluations from the outside, not speaking to the right guys, coaches not wanting to sign on to do this. When you've had 2 full months to prepare this, you know what this looks like? This feels like? This feels a little bit like Penn State, where they fired James Franklin in the middle of the season, and they get to the offseason. Of course, James Franklin goes to Virginia Tech, steals like Penn State's entire recruiting class, really devastates them in the portal. He has Virginia Tech looking like an early top 25 team. Penn State, they end up getting Matt Campbell, and Matt Campbell is a good coach, but they whiffed on 10 different coaches before that, and they kind of just scrambled together to make the Matt Campbell thing happen last second. And then their team, their roster still isn't anywhere as close to as good as it was the year before. They haven't brought in a great class. So I'm getting increasingly concerned that's the spot the Commanders are falling into. And again, these 8 names: Teryl Austin, Dennard Wilson, Karl Scott, Al Harris, Jonathan Gannon, Brian Flores, Joe Cullen, Patrick Graham. No disrespect to any of these people. It's not even so much that they're speaking to this guy or this guy or this one or this one. It's the fact that there's 8 interviews. I don't know why I just held up 5 fingers like that was 8. 8 interviews. They have 2 others, basically they wanted to interview, and there's still no action on it. It's at the point where this is not standard. People are being hired. Mike McDaniel has been hired. Jesse Minter has been hired. What's his name from Boston? Jeff Hafley has been hired. John Harbaugh has been hired. Jeff Ulbrich and Kevin Stefanski have been hired. So, Commanders, we got to make sure that we are not messing this up. We got to make sure that our guys are not slipping away. And if they're starting to, you got to figure out a way to incentivize them to be here. If the Dan Quinn hot seat concern is real, and I will say this, I do think Dan Quinn is absolutely on the hot seat going into this season. I would just like someone, trying to figure out how to phrase this appropriately. When you are making a sheet of pros and cons for various head coaching candidates that are out there, and let's talk about like the real big dogs, right? Like, let's talk about a Mike McDaniel. Let's talk about a Jesse Minter. Let's talk about that crop, right? If you stack them up next to Dan Quinn, what are Dan Quinn's pros right now? What's in the pros column? He got the team to 12-5. Okay, he was the coach when that happened, sure. Good culture guy. Players love him, right? But what is that cutting edge difference? For him, it's his ability to build a positive culture. But in the modern NFL, talent is so high, the schematics have to be just off the charts, and that's how you create the separation. Don't get me wrong, having a good culture is important, but there's a reason that the tacticians are the guys that are up there. What's happening right now? I mean, Sean Payton has always been thought of as one of the best defensive minds. Mike McDonald, one of the best defensive minds. Sean McVay, everybody's trying to hire the next Sean McVay. Who'd they just be? Ben Johnson. The exception to this rule is Mike Vrabel, and I don't think Mike Vrabel is a bad schematics guy at all. That Patriots defense is wicked, but you also think of Vrabel as more of a culture guy. But the point that I'm making here is, if Dan Quinn doesn't have that defining schematic quality, characteristic, whatever, then his coordinators do. Someone's got to have it on the team. And they can't seem to hire a coordinator. So we will wait to see how this search goes. Again, Karl Scott would be the guy that I'll be looking at right now. That's the guy who would absolutely make me excited. Wouldn't call it a bad hire at all. But that's where I'm at with this. Just my thoughts on it, guys. If you agree, if you disagree, whatever it is, make sure you throw it down in the comment section below. Hit the like and the hype buttons if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new around here. Appreciate you all just listening to my opinions. Again, normally I've got huge notes app pulled up, or not notes app, but like in a Google Doc, I've got a bunch of notes, and this was just kind of me freestyling it, sharing my thoughts. So if you enjoyed it, make sure you hit the like again. Appreciate you all rocking out with me. Have a great day. Stay safe out there. Snow is going to be coming in pretty soon, so hopefully I keep power and I'll be able to speak to all of you beautiful people tomorrow. But that's going to do it. Appreciate you all joining me, and I'll catch you in the next one. Have a great day.